All right, welcome everyone to another seminar of young researchers of another seminar of young researchers of quantum gravity. Today we have Sergio Aguirre Guterres. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but probably not.
It's okay.
So Sergio did his master in Sao Paulo, then did his PhD in Leuven University, and is now a postdoc in Okinawa. And he's going to talk today about moving boundaries in sign dilation, Lyttelton gravity with double-scaled Sykes model.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the introduction, and thank you for having me here, also for the flexibility in the schedule. So also the participants, hope you find it interesting. So I'll tell you a bit about this work, basically based on this recent work, and also okay, maybe I should and also some work in progress. So this is mostly based on as the title says, about the T-square deformations. Here is about obtaining some type of a relation between different type of approaches about what was theory to the double scale work. So holographic about holography outside the ADS-CFT correspondence. Yeah, for more general type of spacetimes, this has been like a prolific area of research that the people are actively engaged on. So, for instance, there are like this so-called T-bar deformations that you can have in two type of procedures, let's say, with a single trace deformations, and that basically this changes the local geometry. And there are also the so-called double trace deformations, where you instead change the boundary conditions. So these are like two approaches where you start with a theory that there is like a CFT that is equal to some ADS theory, but you can change the geometry in different type of ways. And there is like a new line of interest about the yeah, for instance, we have like a lot of analytic control when we work in lower dimensional theories. And like very recently, there's like a particular example. There is the double stage bouquet that the people are maybe different people have like a different type of opinions, but there's the usual consensus that this is like not exactly a theory that the whose pole dual will be ADS, at least not in the for arbitrary high energy scales. So some people might say that this is like a dual to the CT space without the more details about the specifics. And yeah, there's like a very recent proposal that they are also showing through more formal methods that this is actually basically with canonical quantization that this is like holographically dual to a Sine-Dilaton theory, Sine-Dilaton gravity. That will be like the main type of focus for our work. So we would like to incorporate these two type of approaches to having holography outside the ADS dictionary. And we want to distinguish among the different type of proposals for this type of pole-dual geometries to the WCS model. So I'll tell you why we should be interested in this particular model for this. So there's a very nice review that I also recommend, and there are like several papers about this type of theories. Okay. So this double six-Fourier model is basically a model with the Eimer fermions that they have E all-to-all interactions, and then yeah, this is like the definition for how the Marianas fermions act, and the couplings is J I with the 1 to P are yeah, basically they have a different type of well, you can choose a different type of distribution, but the ones where we have like a most control or better understanding is when they are like a Gaussian distributed. And there's the so-called double scale limit, where we take the total number of fermions and the number of all-to-all interactions to infinity. but we keep certain ratio, basically p squared over n, to be fixed. And in this case, it has been like a well studied that that this type of a system has like a collective description that they can be studied using this anneal ensemble averaging for the moments of the Hamiltonian. That basically when we consider expectation values of traces of the Hamiltonian at power, then we can derive certain expressions. I'll show you how they look about the basically about how to map this type of observables, these powers of the Hamiltonian to something else that or well to a different type of description of the same system. Although, well, I should say that it's like an auxiliary description of the system that they might not be related to the original type of Hilbert space that we started with, to be a bit more precise. So this is okay. So I'm just starting with a brief review, and then I will show you more about what are the specifics of the work. So the idea about this double square model is basically we started with this type of description where you want to compute the trace of several strings of fermions. That basically they look like this. It comes basically from the Hamiltonian because we're taking it to certain power. So basically, we have a representation of this trace in terms of a thermal circle that is like just a closed surface where you put at each of the where you put like a k number of vertices because we're elevating an observable with the k strings of fermions, and at each of the points we given the properties that we started with about the like the distribution of these couplings. This basically implies that only when you have like a pair-square contraction between the strings of areas, for instance, this psi ij with the psi ii, then we can have like a contribution in terms of this ensemble average moment of the Hamiltonian. So this is like a graphical representation in order to have like a description of the statistical properties of this system that we would like to study in terms of something more where you can get like a better intuition about what's happening with the quantum system. So that's why we will introduce an auxiliary quantum system for this description of the ensemble theory. So the idea is that once we have like this construction of the system of fermions, we can also like code the diagram. This is the so-called core diagram representing like a different waves contraction between the strings of fermions. That we put in terms of just a planar type of a diagram where you have like a different type of or this waves contraction just look. Basically, between each of the vertices, there is like a line that you put an index, for instance, from 0 to I, depending on how many contractions you're looking at. And in principle, this goes from 0 to k minus 1, you can say. So at each of the vertices, we can try to look at how many of these chords will be like intersected by this imaginary type of a line between each of the vertices of the fermions. With that, we basically record a recurrence relation that I think I'll show you in the next slides. But it's basically this. Let me see if it looks fine. Okay, okay. So probably I had to put the other relation. Okay, so sorry about the technical detail. Here there was also a part with the recurrence relation between the different amplitudes. Essentially, you can count about the sum of all the possible chord diagrams where you have like this with the k contracts with k Hamiltonian moments. you basically recover like a recurrence relation depending on how many of the open cores you can get, or how many contractions there can be between the index I and the index I minus one. So you basically count, let's say, how many of these chords will close immediately after, before coming to the index side, in order to count the sum of all the possible amplitudes that you can recover, and also how many of these chords will open immediately after before the index side. So this basically results in a relation for the Hamiltonian of an auxiliary quantum system that I'll show you in the previous slides. Okay, so here I just want to give a bit of motivation of why we should care about this system. So yes, the first obvious motivation is that you have I'll try to show you why exactly this happens, but basically this is a system with a finite entropy and a finite. This is like a finite thermodynamic entropy, and also a finite energy spectrum. So basically that the energy spectrum is continuous. It has like a maximum and minimum values. For instance, you can think just at the on-shell level, but you can also add like a quantum corrections on top of that. It turns out to be finite even at different temperatures. So this is by definition something that we can call we complete in that sense. And this is why it's also like something interesting to study in relation to JT gravity. There is like a particular limit of this Squelch model that basically recovers also there is a so-called triple scale limit whose Hamiltonian can be like easily shown to be like a dual to the one that you will recover for JT gravity in a canonical quantization. Also, this one of the main reasons to be interested, at least in the literature, is also that the 4-point functions are analytically solvable, and there are like also general rules for other amplitudes that can be like extensively developed. There's like a lot of the different type of counting problems that you can make for this, not just from the Hamiltonian moments, but in principle also for all the type of amplitudes that involve also like a matter instead of only Hamiltonians. You can basically derive them using a particular set of rules that they were introduced by these authors. And there is also a lot of very interesting structure about for instance, the connection with the quantum group of this theory is the same one that you will find for the zeta space, for instance, at the semi-classical level. There are also connections with the Liouville gravity. When you take basically this parameter, the dilaton with an height, it basically becomes something that is like a dual to this Liouville gravity. And there is also the algebra of Kuznetsov that is, okay, sorry. Yeah, this I should have clarified. So the quantum groups basically become like the ones of generalization for JT gravity. So it's SLQ2R. Meanwhile, the algebra of Kuznetsov is the one that is like basically shares the same one as DS in the semi-classical level. And there are other developments that also make this theory very compelling. Okay, so I'll explain about the several averaging of the theory that I briefly mentioned. Basically, this double square model, you can think that there is like an auxiliary description of using the number of open chords that I basically explained between each of these nodes of the strings of fermions. At each of the times that basically we have like a discretize at the start, you can recover in terms of the picture in the thermal circle. Then you can basically write it in terms of a new Hamiltonian that is acting on the so-called core Hilbert space. that is like a counting how many of these open cores, the Wish contractions, you have about a certain index for the times, the Euclidean times in this case. The representation for the Hamiltonian is basically basis dependent. So that if you pick, for instance, for defining the inner product to be in this form for this basis, then you can record a simpler explanation for the Hamiltonian that there is like a manifestly unitary, although there are like other representations where this is not true. But yeah, this one is the most convenient one in order to discuss about the properties like Krylov complexity of this type of a system. And this is the so-called Q number. So this is like something that appears very frequent in the quantum group, for instance. So this is the so-called okay. So as I told you, there's like a some auxiliary quantum system that you can try to have for in principle it's like this new Hilbert space that we defined. The core Hilbert space is like a completely unrelated to the original one of the n Mariana-Fermions with n to infinity. But then nevertheless, what I was mentioning here is that basically this new auxiliary Hilbert space reproduces the same observables as the one that when we just studied the several average properties of the original system. So that's why we are doing this we are trying to solve this system. So there is a so-called eigenvalue problem that is like the usual one in quantum mechanics, and you can find like wave functions for this system in terms of these amplitudes that they go between the energy eigenstates and the and this new type of oscillating quantum state for the chords. They take this recurrence relation that basically this follows from the previous Hamiltonian expression, and this one follows also from the part that I didn't write down in the slides. That is basically just a combinatorics of the different ways that you can close or open the chords that go beyond or about this index site. And then you can basically map that problem by making a separation between all the sum of the amplitudes into this auxiliary Hilbert space, but in terms of the Hamiltonian that is like acting on this on the states. So there is a particular mapping that you can do in order to reproduce this type of description in terms of an auxiliary quantum system. And these are like the expression for the solutions of these wave equations that are the so-called Hermite polynomials. So they have just to show you what are the expressions. So they are like different properties that you can use from these Q-Hermite polynomials to reduce what are the appropriate normalization for this energy basis. And with that, you can basically study different properties or different observables that you may want, like the partition function or two-point correlations, and higher correlation functions are also possible to be studied in this way. So these are just the formal relations that they are like very useful to truly solve the system in an analytic way. So then we can also consider about the semi-classical thermodynamics. This is like some very useful guiding principle in order to like also deduce what should be the properties of the dual system to the double-stage model. And this is like how some of the authors proceeded. So this is like so-called semi-classical expansion because there's like a factor of 1 over log 2, at least in the normalization that I'm showing you. That basically you can see that the on-shell action for this guy is basically like a 1 over log 2. So this plays the role of the Newton constant if you want to think about it in that sense. So this is why we call it semi-classical. And you can also derive from the relation of the entropy, thermodynamic entropy, and the energy of this system in this type of this expansion to get also the microcanonical temperature in the semi-classical approximation. And you can obviously also like introduce value corrections in the different, for instance, in the partition function that also has been like well studied and recently also in terms of the holographic duality. Uh, so this is where I would like to introduce the so-called sign dilaton gravity theory that it was developed by these authors. So this is basically a theory that goes like the whole class of dilaton gravity theories, where you pick in particular this type of potential for the dilaton. And there's also a choice for the quantum term that is like basically the most general one that you can have for this type of for, this is like the most generic expression that you can get, and the only restriction is that you also need to have like asymptotic boundaries in the theory. But of course, if you have like if you don't have like an asymptotic boundary, then this doesn't really matter. It can be a different term that you can put in the. Basically, it's just to keep the chill action to be finite. So in this case, this author basically introduces this so-called generalized Brownian boundary conditions, where you can actually show that using these conditions, you can keep for this type of a theory, then you can keep that the potential action is also finite. And why exactly does this theory appear? Then there are like a different consideration. Basically, there is like the historic way that it was introduced was by just studying a generalization of what happens in jetty gravity once you have like this other type of a quantum group, SL to R, with this type of a where you can just introduce this type of boundary conditions and then or well basically derive this type of theory starting from a different type of relation, a so-called Churchill mode. It's basically like a path integral formulation of the double Stieltjes model, where you can do certain transformations, and it basically reproduces this type of a theory in terms of the Klein path integral. You can also try to study about the geometry of this type of a theory. For instance, this is what you can get from a very simple type of ansatz. You can see that this is basically like a black hole solution where you have certain periodicity about the values of R, where you will have like a different horizons. So they are the so-called black hole and cosmological horizons that they will appear depending on the whether the dilaton is like small or large compared to the other one. So for instance, if you have like the theta is a value between 0 and pi, that is the usual one for instance for the double Stieltjes model, then you will have that the value at 2 pi minus theta is like the largest horizon size for the dilaton because the dilaton was exactly as R in this case, and the value of R equal to theta will correspond to the one of the black hole because it's like the smallest one. But this is just arbitrary. No, it doesn't really have a major meaning. And there's also this two pi periodicity, so you can have that the different type of horizons are just shifted respect one to the other. Okay, if you basically you study the theory as using this type of a case into the and use the equations of motion and everything else, then you record this as the eventual action. In particular, using the so-called dilaton gravity potential, then you record something a bit more explicit that basically resembles the eventual action that you record for the double scales OK at the semi-classical level. There's a somehow important difference that the entropy, the thermodynamic entropy is not just linear to theta, but there is also like a quadratic term. In order to like really have the full expression, then there are like extra considerations that you need to have. For instance, about the positivity of the length in an effective type of a frame that I introduced later. For now, you can forget about the subtlety about the specific realization with the thermodynamic entropy in terms of the double Stieltjes model. in order to have like a matching between the parameters from the AGM energy of the signed electron gravity theory in the double six-square model, then you need to introduce these constraints, and similarly for the thermodynamic entropy. Okay, so there's also this well-rescaled version of the geometry that I introduced before, where you basically just introduce this dilaton in a particular way into the metric that I introduced, and then you can see that this requires basically the form of an ADS geometry, where the size of the black hole horizon is given by this sine of theta. There is like a transformation that you need to make in terms of the dilaton to get this form. So perhaps this is why the theory becomes like it's so simple to solve in this signed dilaton gravity theory, because you can basically map it to ADS2. And okay, so this duality with the double six-square model has also been like studied at the different levels by these authors. The starting point was only considering like what type of constraints do you need to impose in the signed electron gravity theory in order to match the observables in the double six-square model, and how to make this more precise in terms of canonical quantization of the gradation Hamiltonian to the one of the Hamiltonian of the double six-square model, which is like a very important development, but then it doesn't really like tell you where exactly or how exactly do those constraints in the gravitational theory arise, because you are like just matching to the ones of the quantum theory that you would like to recover. It was realized later, but by this group of factors that you actually need to have like a gauging of global symmetries of the initial theory. Basically, you have like a periodicity shift in the dilaton value by a factor of 2 pi. This is like a global symmetry, this shift symmetry that basically the Hilbert space of the theory without having like a gauging of this global symmetry has like a lot of null states, so they don't have like a nice properties in order, for instance, to reproduce the thermodynamic entropy of the system. That you after doing the gauging, then you can basically recover the true physical Hilbert space of this gravitational theory, that where this matching, the matching to the double square model basically arises naturally, because this basically only this can be expressed in terms of positivity of certain lengths in the effective geometry between the lengths of a wormhole between the asymptotic boundaries in the effective geometry. That basically I realized like completely from doing this gauging of the global symmetry. So this is like perhaps a more general lesson that they also occurs in quantum gravity for higher dimensions, that is like nicely reproduced in this type of a model. So that's one of the developments, and have been also proposals about the duality being instead with the zeta space. There's also a way that this arises like naturally from the point of view of the signed electron gravity theory, basically by making this type of expansion in the action that I showed you previously. And then you can recover that the bulk action becomes into something much simpler. That is just basically the one of the S space. Here you have this fluctuation of the dilaton is basically the one that becomes the normal dilaton in the SJT gravity in the half reduction model. So this nicely connects also with the proposals by this group of factors, Susskind and Berlin and collaborators. And it has like a different, big difference compared to one of the important like conjectures of the Dr. Susskind about the nature of the holographic degrees of freedom of the zeta space. That is the so-called stress horizon conjecture. So this was like a first introduced in this work, but then it was like developed by by the same author and different and several others. So basically, it tells you that at least the statement is that there is an infinite temperature limit of this double square model that I introduced, which describes the city space, which is like at least in two dimensions. So this is like something extremely useful if you want to study like properties, or at least a toy model that you can have also for the selection accelerating rate of expansion of the universe. Although, yeah, in this case, it's for a lower dimensional case, but it still is something that you should try to like really understand about the nature of the if there is any sort of holography between this type of toy model of cosmology to really understand what was the whether those type of theories can also be like generalized to something more realistic, at least in other developments. So there's the second part of the conjecture of Susskind is basically that the degrees of freedom that they make up this cosmological horizon are hyperfast in the sense that they have a rate of growth that are like exponential for scrambling information. And by scrambling of information, I mean in terms of out of time order correlators, which are like 4-point functions where they put like insertion of pairs at different times, whose time scale is of the order of the de Sitter horizon. So this is why it's called like hyperfast, basically because this only depends on the horizon, on the scale of the de Sitter horizon. And by scale, I mean basically the location of the cosmological horizon respect to an observer in the static patch. This basically means that there's like this parameter lambda in the theory of, for instance, if you think about the Einstein equations, there's the parameter lambda that tells you about the size of the cosmological horizon. The horizon scale is basically like a square root of lambda, if you want to think in those terms, or 1 over square root of lambda. So given that the theory of the double square model in terms of this Sine-Dilaton gravity theory lives at a different location, there is like the one that I introduced before with the generalized Brown-Hinox boundary conditions, and that it doesn't have like this property that as you approach the limit where the Sine-Dilaton gravity theory basically becomes the one of ds that reproduces the theory of ds JT gravity. You also record that this parameter beta that is like 1 over temperature goes to infinity, so the temperature goes to 0 instead of this value that this should go to an infinite temperature. That was the conjecture. So you would like to understand like what's the difference between this type of conjecture that the Susskind made, not from anything. I mean, made from like physical principles that he introduced in this seminal work, versus the one that you find from this more formal approach to the canonical quantization of gravitational theory that actually reproduces all the amplitudes of the Schweike model, at least without matter. So you would like to, so our motivating question is basically whether this conjecture of the stretch horizon might not hold, or whether there are conditions where it actually agrees with the new developments in Sine-Dilaton gravity theories. Okay, so I have problems with the battery. Okay. So this is like the problem that we would like to solve. For that, I basically introduced this T-squared deformations in terms of this Sine-Dilaton gravity theory. So I would like just to also ask Linda whether I have like 10 minutes more because we started a bit late. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. What did you say?
Yeah, we started like 10 minutes late, so I still have like 10 minutes.
Yeah, sure. You can go on. Yes, actually.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is like this is the theory that we are like developing. Okay, my motivation is basically that there is like as I said before, there is like a value of the dileton where it reaches this in terms of the normalization that I have used, where the horizon value basically becomes a pi, and also the dileton can be expanded around this value, and then basically the theory that is like very close to this value of very close to the horizon value when theta is pi, then is basically described by approximately constant rich scalar that is also positive between the location of these two horizons at pi and 2 pi minus theta. So then we have a theory that is approximately the one of ds jet gravity, and then we would like to basically I want to put the location of the boundary of where the double six square model lives at this location, so that I can see whether it agrees with the theory that or the conjecture that the source can originally develop. So this is why I introduced this finite curve using this notion of T-square deformations that is basically a generalization of the T-bar deformations in the finite curve interpretation. But now for the original one of T-bar deformations is for 3D gravity. Now it's like extended to other dimensions, also for lower dimensions. And the one for the lower dimensions is basically a work by Gross and other collaborators. That they were like a focus mostly on having like a dilatorography theory with the finite curve, but that initially has ADS asymptotics. So introducing this finite curve is something a bit less clear once you have, for instance, this generalized Brown-Henoux boundary conditions where the values of the dilaton and the metric are like a complex, and the ball geometry also doesn't have like ADS asymptotics. So then we would like to see what type of conditions we need to impose or that can lead us to or well-defined energy spectrum and other properties that we can try to study. So that's basically the procedure that I outlined here. You can consider just a general dilaton gravity theory, and then with certain Hamiltonian constraint, this is like a very general for any type of a theory of this form that I am showing here, and it has certain just the canonical conjugate to set, for instance, to the stress tensor or to the dilaton at the boundary. The so-called Hamilton-Jacobi equation can be used in order to like define how the theory behaves once I introduce like this finite curve. Then I can see how the what type of properties, for instance, how the energy changes once it introduce this curve. So this is like a very non-trivial if you think about this new notion of boundary conditions. What type of properties that the theory of finite curve should have. So here we can use like a very general expression for how the variation of the Euclidean action in terms of the equations of motion. That's this part, and also the appropriate stress tensor, and also this conjugate like a pair for the dilaton. Then you can reproduce a closed expression in terms of the how the on-shell action changes when you change the location of the boundary. And you see, moreover, this Hamiltonian constraint, then you can also obtain like a relation for basically how to solve this variation of the on-shell action. For that, we also need to do a matching between the conformal boundary metric and the induced metric at the location of this finite curve. This is basically this relation where this gamma is basically this conformal boundary metric that doesn't depend on the value of the dilaton at RP, or that where the scaling becomes of this form, and consequently also for the stress tensor. Basically here is only the tau component because we are like at the boundary, so then there's no, then we have fixed the value of R. It's just a one-dimensional problem at that point. And moreover, when we are talking about just the 0+1 dimensional theory, Then there is also a simple relation between the stress tensor and the value of the energy spectrum of the theory, so that we can basically reproduce the Hamiltonian-Jacobi equation of the dual theory that becomes of this form. So this is basically the same type of expression that you record for instance in the so-called Duval plus lambda 2 type of deformations. Here this plus lambda 2 is basically encoded in some parameter that here you can call it eta minus 1. So here you have like a different this this is like a bit different from the other type of proposals, but it will not be like a very important for the purposes of a talk. But you can think that this only depends on okay on the value of the potential that we are using, and also this content that appear in the original action. Like I try to just point out is coming from here in the boundary part. So as I told you before, there is like a relation where you can have that this G and the U are related in a simple form. This basically occurs when you have like a theory with a asymptotic where you have that the on-shell action is like a finite with the asymptotic boundary conditions at sorry with an asymptotic infinity. But there's also the possibility that you like introduce this t square deformation, and then you put the cutoff at some particular value of the some particular value in R, and then you change like this value of the parameter eta, for instance, by changing the this type of a content then appearing in the action. And there are like different possibilities about the values of eta. In principle, it's like a general function of R, of this value of the dilaton at the boundary. So for now, we will focus mostly on the case when this is just this simple relation, and then you can easily see that the expression for the energy spectrum then becomes something that is like connected to the theory without the deformations. Okay, so this is another part that I prefer to skip because yeah. I would like to tell you more about the physics that occur for the other part when we have like the more specific case when we don't change the value of the potential, and also the value of the content remains the same as just introducing the finite curve, but without changing the values of the other parameters that appear in the so-called flow equation. So basically here I'm fixing that the eta will be equal to +1 and that the y can be any value. That's the expression for this. Just study the reality conditions, and you can actually check that if you take this parameter eta to -1, then basically the same type of physical observables will appear, although the interpretation is a bit different. So there are also these two possibilities about the relative time in the energy spectrum that can be with a relative plus or relative minus. The case with the relative minus, then you can see just by doing a Taylor expansion that basically this becomes when y equal to 0, this basically reduces to the energy spectrum of the theory without the deformation. And when you have the plus, basically this is like a non-perturbative solution that is not smoothly connected to the original seed theory. So this is like something extra that you can also study. So basically, you have to like change the energy spectrum when you introduce this T-square deformation. So part of the spectrum you get from this from the connected solution, the one that is smoothly connected to the seed theory, but there is also like a non-perturbative effects that that are introduced by having this finite curve, and that also appears in the spectrum. So it depends on what the aspects of the theory you're interested in. So for instance, for the purposes of the talk, perhaps it's more intuitive to use the minus sign, but I have also used both in order to develop better about what happens in the theory when you study different type of observables. Something to keep in mind is also that because of the original location of the boundary is like at this asymptotic infinity that also contains like imaginary parts. then basically the boundary theory at the final curve is like a generically a complex number, but this doesn't mean that the theory is non-unitary, but rather that you don't have like a really a Lorentzian interpretation of the theory, because the metric also becomes like a complex at the location of the boundary, because we are like working with the complex metrics. And yeah, basically it happens that only when you have that the metric at the boundary location goes to a real value, and that has actually a Lorentzian interpretation, then you can indeed find that the energy spectrum will become real, and then the theory is unity as you will expect. So that's basically what I show in the following. That you can do the different type of trajectories to have the boundary theory that as I mentioned, it can be at the minus pi and plus pi over 2, sorry, plus psi infinity or minus psi infinity. So like different locations where you have the theory without the deformations, and that you can put into the real axis in the values of r. For the finite curve, where the theory actually becomes like the theory at the boundary actually has like a Lorentzian evolution. That's where you can find that the energy spectrum that I showed you before basically becomes real, and also the metric at the boundary location. So these are like two pictures that you can also basically study. This is basically a parametrization of the boundary theory that goes between the location of the black hole horizon, and this is like a displacement of the black hole horizon by 2 pi. So this is basically like a cosmological horizon that I introduced before. This parameter chi, basically what we're calling the stretch horizon parameter, that has been like introduced in previous works on the stretch horizon holography related to Susskind conjecture, that they were now implementing in the same dilaton gravity case, in order to study the properties at the so-called stretch horizon, but they now realized with the T-squared deformation. So we study, for instance, the dynamics of this theory. So I don't want to take much longer, because I think that I should finish more or less. So, for instance, if you want to study about the energy spectrum, then as I told you, the energy spectrum is just basically a modification by this parameter y for this deformation. You can also find that the thermodynamic entropy doesn't basically change compared to the one that from the original one of the double quick model. The microcanonical temperature does change because of the modifications in the energy spectrum. This is basically just a thermal temperature. So this comes from doing the saddle point approximation for this Klein-Patt integral that computes this partition function. And basically, the saddle point approximation agrees with the classical expectations that we have for instance, for the thermodynamic temperature to be just the one that an observer at the finite curve location in a gravitating region of space-time will observe. That is basically just a redshift factor given by the location where the observer lives. So this is, for instance, something that you can try to study for the properties of the energy spectrum of the theory. You can find, for instance, as I told you, one of the main points of Susskind is that basically the SQK model, when you have it at the location of the stretch horizon of the S space, has like a zero temperature, and this is precisely what you can see in this plot. Here I put like different values of the parameter chi, where chi going to zero coincides with the cosmological horizon, if you want to think on those terms. In the approximation where the sign dilaton gravity theory basically becomes something with a constant, nearly constant in positive rich scalar, so basically it becomes like very close to the zeta space, at least in a region that is like close to the horizon location. And this is indeed what happens, that basically the energy spectrum becomes only non-trivial when this is like very close to beta equal to zero. And this parameter J is just the deformation parameter that I told you before. So it's controlled by the location. As I told you, this holographic dictionary between the T-square deformation and the radial curve in the ball geometry. And this ball geometry is parameterized by this so-called stretch horizon. It's like just an interpolation between the black hole and the cosmological horizon. You can see exactly the same for the thermodynamic entropy. It has like a different values depending on this parameter chi, but it's only when you reach this chi to be a very small number, the smallest one, where the theory becomes basically non-trivial. And there you can see also the nice properties of this of the double Herc model that I told you before was something with a finite thermodynamic entropy and also energy spectrum. So you can see that it's always finite. There are no divergences in this theory. Similar for the heat capacity, you can now just using the definitions, you can see how this behaves. In particular, the heat capacity comes from a positive value to a negative value depending on the thermodynamic microcanonical temperature, and basically this reflects that the system comes from a thermodynamically stable to an unstable type of configuration, depending on the location of the stress horizon. So this helps for different values of this parameter chi, but in particular, when chi is like a very small number, then it happens that this is always a thermodynamically unstable system, so the heat capacity is always negative. And this is like exactly what happens also in DS2 space, where you have the declared wall inside the static part of the sitter. And sorry that I didn't put like a figure for about the DS space. I should have it, but yeah, probably for the next presentation that I put. Just for the people that they might not be familiar with that, but you can also ask questions at the end if you need. So this is basically what I was telling you. That you can try to compare with the thermodynamics of this space. And yeah, so for instance, you can see this is like the geometry of this space. I should put also the pen for that just to give you some just for some people that might not be familiar with that. So in principle, we compare, for instance, the energy spectrum that you obtain by doing this, doing the same type of analysis, introducing this stress horizon parameter in terms of the radial location of the cosmological horizon, and using a particular notion of the contact time in terms of the original action that I showed you for the atom gravity theories. This was introduced by these authors in certain work where they can define, for instance, the notion of mass for this space in terms of the of a square plus where you also have like a weak gravity, at least in 3D. This type of a term actually works. So for instance, this is like a very reminiscent to the notions that we recovered with the DS-Quake model, that basically the theory goes to something that yeah, as you approach the zero horizon, basically all the observables go to be non-trivial only when the beta parameter is going to zero, similar to conjecture of Susskind. And moreover, here there are like a divergences because this is not a UV finite theory. And similar here, you can see that the heat capacity is always negative when you have like a declared wall in the static path. You can also talk about the SYK correlators. I will not go into details because it's already like a time. I can just show you this type of a plots that is like a for thermal correlation function when you introduce like a matter inside the static patch. Sorry, maybe this figure is useful when you introduce like a operators, like this would be like a non-minimally coupled scalars inside the geometry of this signed gravity theory at the location of this finite curve. Uh, and when you compute like a correlation function of these operators, then you can find that the evolution of these operators basically have a structure where they decay very fast when they are like very close to the stress horizon, when this chi parameter goes to zero. And you can find also from the outline of the correlation function that involves like a product of four permanent operators. These are like exchange of a spin of Majorana fermions also in terms of a 2-point function. This was shown by these authors, basically. So you can see that there's an implication that is like a lower bounded by the behavior, or yeah, like the growth of this OTOC is bounded by the growth of the 2-point function, basically. as you can see, this goes like very fast or it decays very fast when it's like when the boundary is very close to the stress horizon. So it means that the order correlation function is also like very fast or that it decays also very fast when it goes very close to the stress horizon. So this also like coincides with the hyperfast scrambling conjecture that the Susskind put in his seminal work, and that is basically reproduced by this finite cutoff version of the Sandillaton gravity theory. And the rest I will not talk about because I don't have the time for this. It will take more time. Basically, there are like notions of complexity that they tell you how chaotic a system can be, and they basically have this relation that they, as you approach the location of the cosmological horizon, let's say, then they also like grow very fast. So it's also reminiscent to the ideas of the original conjecture of stress horizon. Okay, so this is just to summarize about what I told you today. Yeah, we introduced this notion of D-squared deformations in the DSFT holographic dictionary in order to plot these constant and nearly positive, nearly constant and positive curvature regions that they give you like approximation to the SS2 space. And we found also these phase transitions depending on how close we are to the stress horizon. So in these phase transitions are basically only about a statement about the thermodynamic stability of the system. So it can go between a stable and unstable depending on how close we are. But if we are like very close, they are always unstable. We also introduced this notion of hyperfast growth, or we confirm this in terms of the conjecture of Susskind, that we confirm in terms of this lower bound that I show you for out of time order correlation functions in terms of the 2-point functions. And we also confirm with the methods of Krylov complexity that there's something similar to this hyperfast growth appears for this Sandillaton gravity theory with the finite curve. And so this is a bit of an outlook. There are also like a very interesting thermodynamic properties of the DSQL model once you introduce an end of the world plane in the holographic theory dual to that. Like very interesting discussions about the spread complexity that can be studied with this notion of the double Sykes-Picot model that we would like to like introduce. You can ask me more about this, but basically this is like a part of these ideas of complexity applied to this microscopic model that I think that these are like a better understanding in light of our recent work. And a further type of deformations instead of D-squared deformations is this so-called T-bar deformations. Once you introduce like an U1 charge in the model, that will be like very interesting to incorporate in our type of description. Yeah, the tools are already there, so I think that is like a natural next step to incorporate. So with that, I just want to thank you for listening and tell me if you have questions.